Bibi Brzozka is a renowned conscious sexuality expert and coach who helps individuals release the most expressed and embodied version of themselves through their sexuality. She's shared her teachings and practices with over 100,000 people across the world, sparking deep conversations about intimacy and sex in the places where you'd least expect it. Mitra, what were some of the key takeaways for you from this episode?
I was fascinated by the fact that conscious sexuality basically was one of the ways of applying mindfulness. If somebody told me that a few years ago, I would say, what? But that was fascinating to find out. And at the personal level, I realized that apparently there are many ways of experiencing orgasm, not just what the mainstream knows. She spoke about neckgasm and eargasm, emotion-gasm. Apparently there are a lot of gasms that, yes, that at least I was unaware of. So what about you?
The biggest takeaway for me, I'd say, was the topic of self-pleasure. Experiencing a total paradigm shift about how I look at self-pleasure. And rather than looking at that as a way to escape, approaching it as a way of demonstrating self-love.
If you're someone that experiences shame around sexuality or self-pleasure, or if you are curious about pleasure and self-pleasure, or generally you have some questions and interest around healthy sexuality, this episode is definitely for you. Let's take a listen together. Hi, Bibi.
Hi.
Good to see you. I'm so excited about this connection. I don't know you, but I've read about you, and that was very exciting to see a woman speaking about liberation and sexuality. Let me start with the most difficult question. I've worked with couples for 40 years. I question deeply monogamy. I am in a monogamous relationship, but I'm very fascinated by the question, is this really natural to us? Because I see a lot of work that needs to be done. And I also see monogamy broken many times. So, yeah, I'm really interested to hear your deeper view, not whether you are or not, but what is the deeper view on monogamy?
Great question. And I'm wondering myself and exploring different options within my own relationships. And I guess I want to just start with what the research says. And I really enjoyed Sex at Dawn, read it more than once. And when you read the book and research that has been done, it proves that we are not supposed to be monogamous. That for thousands of years, and our bodies are designed to actually have multiple partners. And I see how this plays in relationships, because really, how many couples do I know that have a long-term thriving sexual relationship? Very little, very few. No, for me, it's not really about so much saying it's this way or it's that way. We are monogamous or we aren't monogamous. I think this answer is something everyone should answer for themselves. I know people for whom monogamous relationship work, not that many, but some. And then most for whom this option doesn't work. Now, I have been myself in monogamish relationships, and that really worked for me. And I want to continue exploring that. I think the challenge is that we know that on a larger scale, monogamy doesn't work, but we still haven't even figured out what is the alternative. I think polyamory is still quite new, quite complex, and I think most people don't really have enough tools and education to even be in a monogamous relationship, let alone in polyamory relationships. So it's this continual dance of exploration. And I actually believe that even for me, it really depends on a partner. So with each relationship, I bring a new possibility, a new exploration, a new inquiry. possibilities. And it's something that we co-create. Relationship is not just something that you create by yourself, right? It's a dance where two people keep on co-creating the dynamic. And this dynamic between the two people will be unique, right? Even with me and one partner and me with another partner. Maybe with one partner, I want to be monogamous, and maybe with another partner, what fits me more is being monogamous, because let's say his erotic blueprint is different, and there are parts of my sexuality that, in a way, cannot be satisfied with this person. And in that case, I potentially want to open it up. But maybe with another partner, it wouldn't be the case. So I think people are trying to often give this radical answer, is this or that, and I am this or that, while I'm going to invite everyone to really see a unique dynamic in every relationship. And based on that, co-create what fits both best.
So let me take it a little bit deeper. I assume you're only speaking about physicality. And to me, being monogamous goes way beyond physicality. So intellectually, I may not be monogamous. Spiritually, I may not be monogamous. So I really want to speak about that, because normally we just say physicality and pleasures that come from that interaction. But really, to me, it's a triangle. It's far more than physical. Tell me more about other kinds of monogamy or lack of monogamy that you see.
Yeah, it's interesting that you ask that, because I actually was flirting with a gentleman who, not really flirting, we were playing, and he was like, well, I am in a sexually monogamous relationship. And my question was, are you allowed to play energetically with other people? And he completely didn't know what I mean. And I probably would say most people would be surprised by this differentiation and this question. And if I can generalize a little bit, I would say that for most men, it is more acceptable where women are emotionally intimate with other partners, but less acceptable if they're physically intimate. And for women, again, it's a generalization, but there's some truth in it. For women, it would be the other way around, probably. So it's an interesting observation, again, what matters for different people. And I think for me, I am energetic erotic blueprint. So I would play with energy constantly. Yeah, and for me, it is a big part of the connection. I actually, with a lot of lovers, it starts with energy play, and the physical part doesn't come in for quite a while. So there are definitely differences. What I would say is that majority of the people have no idea about this differentiation. And this is actually what I teach couples quite at the beginning of the journey, that there are different layers to intimacy. I actually do 4: mental, physical, spiritual, and energetic. And I would probably say the same question, guys, that this is for every couple to decide what it means for them and what they're open for and what they're not. But we would need to take a step back and educate most people what the difference between those different types of intimacy are. For me, an energetic exchange is so deep, because
Amen.
I can have energy orgasms. I can, without taking my clothes off, I can have energy orgasms over Zoom. I can help them activate their energy. I can energetically influence other people. And often this is really deeper than physical intimacy. So for me, this should be absolutely a conversation. But again, I wouldn't say there is a black and white, so I'm open to it. And it also needs to be consensual on the other side, because, Mitra, how many people do you really know that would be able to answer the question of, hey, are you open to be energetically intimate with me?
Yeah, not
Very
many.
intimidating.
He's like,
Very
whoa.
scary proposition.
Confusing.
What are you gonna do?
Surprising.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yes, I don't know if this exactly answer your questions, but again, for me, there are not really, it's not so black and white.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's also what you want, right? So there's what each partner brings, and then there's also being intentional about which partners you're inviting in and what your soul is desiring right now for you in your life. So what are you desiring for yourself right now when it comes to intimacy?
What I am desiring right now is someone who is a support for me. And I'm going to give you a context since we open up the for vulnerability. I'm going through a challenging period in my life. Last year, my mom passed away. And just a few months ago, I found out with my dad that he has a 4-stage cancer. And I'm the only daughter. So that's why I'm back at home at my dad's place. And I think he is the main masculine figure for me in my life in the next few months. And I would like to honor that. So at this very moment, I am not necessarily looking for love or life partner. And I'm going to give you again a context. Last year, during my mom passing, I fell in love with someone. And it took away my presence from her in her process. And she actually noticed that. So this was an interesting realization and something that I want to bring this time to my dad. And I also feel like there is a lot of healing with masculine that I'm going through, as my dad relationship with my dad has always been challenging. So what I'm currently looking for is someone, and I actually met this person, who is there to support me, hold me, support me, give me a loving, grounding, soothing touch, caress me, energetically cocoon me, and just wrap me with loving, supportive vibrations.
So
because if you would ask me if
you're in Poland right now, so it's having someone physically present. Yeah.
So yeah, because if you probably would ask me in a bit of like even a few months ago, then I look for love or a life partner. But in this very moment, the priority has shifted a little bit.
Well, I just thought about that you're using energetically in a general sense, the word energetics, that it talks about emotions, but also it refers to soul. Am I correct in that assumption?
Actually, because I'm referring mostly what I do, and what I do is a lot of activation of sexual energy and energetic lovemaking. I was more referring to literally the exchange of energy.
Yeah. What about soul? What is the role of soul because you use that word in your expression of what you do. You talked about mind and heart. I think it was soul and sensations or something like that, if I remember correctly. So I want to know what you mean by soul. That's my question. And my observation of what you said was that was very interesting that you identified how at different times and different stages of our lives, we have the need for different kind of intimacy. And I was just thinking about that what if we were in tuned enough with one particular partner, meaning in a monogamous relationship, that we go together there. There's a time that is like thing for physical intimacy and the energetically is next time, and support is the next week, or just being in tuned enough to understand that there are different kinds of needs and different kinds of intimacy. So that was the observation, but my question was about more of the soul. What do you personally mean when you talk about soul?
Yeah, so I probably mostly talk about soul when I mention depths of lovemaking. And I often talk about not just physical sex, but really lovemaking that nourishes your heart and your soul and is really, really deep. So what I mean by that there is, I refer to this emerging and melting that occurs that is beyond the physical. And there's this feeling of complete oneness. And it's very clear when that happens. You can really feel it. And it's exactly this feeling when we like intertwine on a soul, cellular, heart, spirit level, whatever exploration works best for you. And this 1+1 is, together is infinite.
Infinity.
One
Yeah.
plus, yeah, 1+1 is not just 3. It's 1+1 is infinity. That's what like soul nourishing lovemaking means for me. Now, I'm curious if I understood you correct with the second part of the question. If there can be an understanding in a relationship where I need to step more into being closer to my father, while at other times closer to a partner. Absolutely, yes. However, because I am single, I observe that first 6 months of a relationship are intoxicating. We know that there's all a series of hormones that is released. We are in a honeymoon period, and it's much more, I don't want to say maybe a word consuming, but it's different than when being with someone in a 10-year relationship and having a conversation or understanding or attunement with your partner that there's a time for different types of intimacy. While when it is the very beginning, I feel it might be a little bit more challenging. And that is partially what happened actually last year when I met a gentleman, and I was very early on in a relationship, and I was down on my knees while witnessing my mom suffering so much for several months. And my business was going down, and there were other things, just dark night of the soul. And that's what I brought really early on into this relationship. And despite the fact that this gentleman was so conscious, so beautiful, still it was a lot. And it turned out to be too much. So despite the fact that his invitation was, I'm here for all of you, he wasn't there for all of me. Yeah. I'm not judging or blaming, but and he still supported me in different ways, but the romantic relationship part didn't pass this test for us. So yeah, I hope you understand what I'm trying to say here. So yeah, it is a little bit of a different situation when you start dating, when you just fall in love,
But to me, when you said that, to me, what they call honeymoon period, I think it's more referring to physicality, because I'm just experiencing a renewed honeymoon period with my partner after 19 years in a much, much deeper emotional soul perspective, which, by the way, affects the physicality. But first it was like, oh, wow, what a body. And then it's, wow, what a soul, what an emotion, what vulnerability. And to me, that is extremely sexy. There is nothing sexier than a partner, again, personally, that opens up and goes to a deep place with me instead of protecting or defending or just wanting to know mine. The exchange is so so sexy. I think that's the only word I can use. It is so sexy. But then I suppose I'm just talking about the same question of what are we talking when we speak about intimacy. So there's so many levels of intimacy. Deeper intimacy needs time. Sexuality could be instant. I can just meet someone and just be wowed by the attraction I feel in my body, as you called it, sensations of the body. And then I'm just going with your words, then heart and mind. Mind is very important, like how much intellectually we can exchange and how do we respect each other intellectually. I think that's very important, because it's really interesting when I hear partners talk about how dumb somebody is, and I'm thinking, oh, that really hurts me, that word, or stupid or dumb, and I jump. But I understand that they're saying intellectually I'm not being satisfied. That's what they're saying. Intellectually, this person's knowing and knowledge is not fascinating to me. But anyways, I was just referring to that the honeymoon period can really continue. It's not just a Hallmark card. It actually can, and I've experienced it.
Yes, absolutely. And it does, but it is a bit of a different quality of the honeymoon period, because for the first few months, there's just a certain cocktail of hormones that we're flooded with, which richly makes us high, while that long-term honey period is more a practice, is more an intention, is more a decision of cultivating that. And yeah, I would just say it's more a practice.
Or a deeper connection, connection that can naturally happen. A deeper connection that comes from knowing that how exciting it is to explore and grow together, because that is exciting, to be able to unfold ourselves through each. So, yeah. You've been quiet, man.
Yes.
I love this. I'm being nourished on multiple levels. Bibi, you actually had a big impact on my life with that one summit event that I attended. It had a big impact on me, and it changed my relationship to sexuality, to intimacy. And when you were describing what true lovemaking is, merging and becoming one with another person, it brought a few tears to my eyes, because I missed that. I experienced that. I've had a couple partners that I've experienced that with, and it's nourishing beyond words. And you've used the word orgasmic and orgasm. The word that I relate to is bliss. It's a blissful experience. Mm-hmm. And it's a bliss that nourishes my soul, my body, my mind, my whole being. Mm-hmm. It's vitalized. And I miss it because I've been celibate for 2 years. And it's been a process for me of healing my relationship with the feminine, both within me and the feminine outside of me, as people. And I'm ready for that. I'm ready to invite that back into my life. I've done quite a bit of healing. And I also heard you mention about challenges with your father and your relationship with your father, and how you're working with the masculine. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. And I'm also really curious to hear how that has shaped and influenced the work that you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing.
Beautiful. And then once I answer that question, I would love to come back to the statement that you're missing the bliss because you have been celibate for 2 years. I want to bring the bliss to your celibacy.
Oh, we're going to go.
Please, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I would love that.
Beautiful.
You got to be careful, man, here.
Because
I was
celibacy,
it.
Yeah, exactly. Let's come back to this, because that's going to be a nice one. Mm. Yeah, and I'm going to share, my father has borderline personality disorder, in which I didn't understand for most of my life, definitely when I was growing up. And there was resentment and there was hate, and that I experienced in our relationship. And I also left home as soon as I could when I was 18 years old. And this brought a lot of armor in me. Armor being that independent woman who can do everything by herself, who doesn't need a man. Like one of my personas is definitely East European warrior. And partially it has to do with East Europe, and partially it has to do with my dad and my upbringing at home. It served me tremendously in many things. Becoming
Maybe
successful,
can you give us a little bit
traveling.
of context on your father, how he was, his personality type, and what you were dealing with?
Yeah, so if you know a little bit about borderline, usually extremely intelligent, very successful, very charismatic, on the outside looking like a perfect person who is always in the center of attention, solving problems, having answers for all the things. However, there is an element of bipolar slightly, and when it swings to the opposite side, that frustration or aggression is displaced only to people close and behind closed door home environment. So it would be my mom or me. We would see this other side, right? And you never know when the mood will change and there is then anger or criticism, or you always, my mom used to say that we always felt a little bit like there's a policeman in the house and you never know what you're going to get in troubles for. And it's like actually, the title of the book is one of the best books about borderline is Walking on Eggshells. Walking on Eggshells. So that's how it felt. And life was interesting dynamic since we again are going vulnerable here. My mom was shy. That's why she attracted this kind of a partner. And she pushed me gently to the front to do the battle of defending for her. And what it created is listening to her stories and frustration, resentment towards my dad, and then me defending her. And as you can imagine, this influenced, my character, but also the way I relate to men and my relationships. And obviously being always attracted to a similar type of successful, smart men who actually, one of the things with the borderline that they don't love unconditionally, right? They usually find, okay, what is missing? Okay, there was someone better than you, why not you? So I learned to prove love through proving myself. I would always be the A top student. I would always be best at sports. I would always be best overachiever at everything to win his love, and it was somehow never enough, right? And that's the dynamic that I was recreating in most of my relationships, often attracting narcissists, because actually, apparently, a relationship with narcissists is very similar to a relationship with a borderline when it comes to romantic terms. So there was this dynamic that has been replayed for many years. And there was one very powerful relationship with a narcissist who was a conscious narcissist. And he helped me partially clean the father wound. It was really beautiful. Because for the first time in my life, someone said, "You are amazing. You are absolutely fantastic." And just said it so many times. And just really showed it in actions as well, that I finally started to believe it. And interestingly enough, as soon as I did, he gave me the wings to fly and then pushed me off the edge so I could fly by myself. So once he completed that mission, the relationship was over. But you think, Ben, you said it, the healing process never ends. There's always layers. And we peel, we continue to uncover new things. And what I experience is happening right now in this death portal, really, that I've been in since last year. It's the cracking of this East European warrior armor.
Of your East European warrior armor. Ooh.
Absolutely. And last year, and now it continues through the process, I really, after many years of so much success and just beautiful breakthroughs from my clients, beautiful places that I lived in, amazing events, there came this intense period of death, fear, void, loneliness. And I really went there. I really went there with the heartbreak, with my mom passing, and now with my dad's sickness. There was nowhere to escape it. And there is a certain maturing that happens. There is more depth to me. I met other parts of me that I didn't have a chance to meet before when I was busy being successful and helping others. I met the scared part of me. I met the heartbroken part of me. I met the part of me that is fearing death. I met the part of me that is fearing being left alone in this world after both of my parents are away. And I held her, and yeah, I allowed her to, first of all, even come online. I gave her space. I gave her attention. I gave her love. And there was a big softening that happened. And it was interesting to observe how many clients, how many friends reached out to say that they perceive different quality to my being. That there is a new level of softness and empathy and compassion and presence. I thought this was already a lot. Now I'm like, okay, there is more to go. There's more to unravel.
It's endless.
And I think for this period particularly, and we all say you've done a lot of healing. If you think you're done, come back home to your parents' house and you'll find out there's much more to be done. And that's exactly what happened.
Life brought you back. You gotta love it.
Life brought me back.
You're asking for it. You're wanting it, and life brought you back to have that initiation.
And there's still some resentment, and there's still some resistance, and there's still some fighting that I'm doing. There's still this idea that I want to change him in some subtle levels, and there's still this idea that he fully doesn't love me or accept me, and I'm still fighting for it. Instead, just really being with what is pure love, pure presence. I'm still fighting, and there are still moments that I'm fighting. Less and less. Yeah.
So many questions, but I'm going to let you go at Ben.
Yeah.
Unfolding Ben.
And I believe, Jojo Ben, I'm just going to say, I'm going to add one sentence to this. Like, for me, I know it is as uncomfortable as it is. I know that if I fully let go of all these stories, armor, resentment, and I fully do the merging and the melting with him on a soul and energetic level, that's going to be a huge breakthrough and portal for relationships with men that will unfold afterwards.
I perceive that. I feel so much love and compassion for you. I can relate in my own way to a lot of things that you have said, and I love what you use the word softening, and that's been a big theme for me this year, is continuing to soften into my pain, into my shadows, into just softening and not necessarily trying to do anything about it, but just literally allowing myself to fully fall into it without any resistance. And it's such a beautiful process.
May I have a question on the father before we move forward?
Yes, please. Please do.
Ben, did I cut you off?
Yes, you did. But
Go ahead.
But go for it. Ask your question. I'm very curious.
We're quite vulnerable and direct with each other too. You're not the only one.
Well, it's a compliment to you, Bibi. We're so excited to learn more about you.
True. I wondered how, because you used the word policeman that your mom used for your father. How is this policeman, how has he been dealing with the profession you have chosen, I wonder?
This is an interesting one because my parents were pretty cool and open-minded. They traveled, they did sports. My mom was topless since I remember. I saw my parents naked in the bathroom. And they were quite relaxed about many things, including that one. There was a little bit of a sadness because my dad would always dream for me to be a doctor or a lawyer, which was his unrealized dream, or at least a manager in the bank where I was close to. So there was a little bit of jokes or that you joined the sect at the beginning, but not too much. And then my parents visited me in Toulon. They came to some of my talks. They saw how much I was loved and appreciated by the community. It was so beautiful because my mom cried one day and I was like, Mom, why are you crying? And she said, I'm just so happy to see what a beautiful life you created and how you found your passion and how you're thriving. And it just makes me so happy. So yeah, they're actually quite accepting. And my dad one day asked me, can you do a session on me? Like on those things that you do in clients?
Really?
Energetic one. And I did. And yeah, and then as I continue, there's obviously more and more success. I come out in magazines that are sent home to my parents, and I come on different podcasts. And yeah, so that kind of opened up my dad. And I'm just gonna say one more thing. Last night I was on a date with a gentleman, and it was a sensual date, and I now leave my house telling my dad, I'm going on a date, don't worry about me. And it was such a beautiful, nourishing date that today over breakfast, I shared everything with my dad because I actually did a sensual activation on him recently. So yeah, right now he's fully supportive of this. And yeah, and it's beautiful to witness.
Bibi, I'm so curious. Imagine your father was a healthy father figure. Let's say you grew up being loved the way that you needed to be loved by your father and receiving all the things that you needed. Would you be doing what you're doing today? And if so, how would it be different, do you think?
So I think I definitely would be doing what I'm doing today. And part of it is because I feel like this seed was planted when it comes to conscious sexuality through an energetic activation, not necessarily through my relationship struggles. Yeah, does that make sense? It came from the lack of fulfillment. My 15 years in corporate world, I was unfulfilled. I got to a place of something comparable to midlife crisis. I lost my mojo. And I left the corporate world and embarked on a personal growth journey, initially because of this lack of fulfillment and trying to look for my passion and what's my purpose. And then led to all the events and a full body orgasm, and then following this direction. Then later on, I brought more awareness to my relationship dynamics, and things started unfolding, and the father thing came. But you see how that series of events came from a little bit of a different avenue.
Yeah. And so the question is then, how would have your path, I'd be so curious how you would have manifested it differently, because one thing you mentioned is your warrior nature is a byproduct of how your dad was. It was an adaptation to that. So, and it seems like that's also what has made you very successful.
Exactly. The double-edged sword. The double-edged sword. Yes. What probably would maybe have been different is I'm going to take a step back, and I actually recently did a beautiful practice with my dad where we sat and put a timer and shared what do you love about me for quite a long time, and tapped into things that we have never shared with each other. With that came that at the same time, so many things that I am grateful for in myself that allowed me to be where I am today are things that I inherited from him, like being persistent, going after what I want, smart, organized, etc. So as you say, this is a big part of me reaching thousands of people and having a business that I have. So yeah, without him, I don't know if we would be speaking in this podcast. I would probably still experience full body orgasm and energetic lovemaking.
I wonder too if you would have been experiencing as many lovers as you have, right? Because that's been a big part of your work. I think your experience with the different kinds of lover is what makes you such an incredible teacher on the topic.
That's a good point too. I would probably maybe be in a more monogamous relationship with in a one healthy one instead of repeating some patterns that end up in a shorter term relationship. So that could be. It's a beautiful point. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, it's a tricky question to answer because you can really go so many different directions. So yeah.
It's an interesting thing to contemplate, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I think I'll leave it at that.
Thank you for sharing. Really appreciate your openness and your vulnerability.
What about Ben?
Bring it on.
What about Ben? So it's interesting. There was an underlying belief that celibacy means no access to bliss. Have you noticed that?
Yes.
I have. There's a gap. I'm not being nourished. I'm not receiving something that I feel like I actually want and need.
It's interesting. My most popular course, it's a signature course hundreds of women went through, and it's called Ladder to Bliss. And it's all about women tapping into their own body, reclaiming their own pleasure, activating their own sexual energy through a self-pleasure practice. And I can tell you that they get pretty high on that ladder to bliss and blissful states.
But for men, both literally and energetically, energy is moving out of us. This is how I perceive it, and this is how I experience it.
Ben,
life force energy is moving out of me.
We need a class. Listen, so Ben, just a simple explanation. That's where you have the most common scenario where you direct the energy downwards, outwards through a more like less conscious, low vibration, masturbation, ejaculation.
Yeah.
But if you start practicing high vibration masturbation, the same way as we do, you raise, and that's the whole point of most of the traditions like Taoist tradition, etc. You raise that sexual energy and experiencing it full body bliss, experiencing healing, big healing actually. And I would say that self-pleasure practice, because I have so many women with history of sexual trauma and abuse, I would say probably about 40% of my female clients. And self-pleasure is the most powerful tool of healing. So bringing this whole new way of tapping into your body and self-pleasure practice is so important because it's going to rewire the way you make love with other people. The way you make love with yourself, it's hugely impacting the way you make love with other people. Start with healing your relationship with self-pleasure before you even continue engaging with other women. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it's interesting because I have experienced what you're describing, pulling up the energy, which, by the way, you were the one who planted that seed for me. And that's what opened up the exploration of drawing energy up and into the heart. And with a partner, with the right partner, not with any partner, with the right partner, I can do that. And it's incredible. So I have that experience, and I've tried to bring it into my self-pleasure practice, but without success. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is I'm very sensitive to my body, and I've experimented on and off with masturbation. So I know how I feel after ejaculation or after self-pleasure versus not doing it. I know how my energy is, if I feel focused and my centered, if I'm feeling tense. And when I've experimented with it in the past, I've observed that almost invariably the next day I feel off my center. My energy feels a little bit off. I'm not as focused. It was not vitalizing for me. It was the opposite. It was pleasurable in that moment, but it was not, the after effects were not positive for me.
Just from moving your energy up?
I think my challenge is that I have such a strong association just based on my bad self-pleasure practices in the past that I haven't overcome that. And I think that is the challenge.
Yeah. But I would still argue with some statements here. Like, for example, you mentioned I can do it with a partner, with the right partner. Giving your power away, because you can actually do it by yourself. And if you start to practice and are capable of moving the energy, raising it within yourself in your own practice, then you can really do it with any partner, actually. And then you can then bring them on and invite them. But there's still a resistance. There's still...
Starting to experience a paradigm shift, though. What I'm experiencing is it's not about the pleasure is a side effect of it. Really, it's about making love with oneself. In the same way that I am merged with another partner, it's not about the physical. When I have that experience, very small fraction of it is physical. Yeah. Most of it is an energetic exchange that I can't even put into words, but it is just so nourishing. And
but pleasure is energy. Pleasure is energy on its own. The quality of it's made out of energy. Pleasure is like, where is it? It's energy.
But there's a difference between pleasure and bliss. And I see pleasure in my mind.
How do you see it differently?
Pleasure is something that there's a cost to pleasure. Bliss is there's no cost. Bliss is, an orgasm it nourishes you. It like a real orgasm that is blissful. There isn't an energetic cost. It actually it vitalizes.
Wow, cost is a very heavy word you use.
Yeah, what is the cost of pleasure, Ben? What is the cost of pleasure, Ben? We jumped in here like that.
Common session, Bibi and I.
No, Ben, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you're assuming pleasure equals ejaculation equals.
That's what I associate it with. I think it matters really where's my consciousness? Is it in my penis or is it in my heart? And I think this is really what I'm saying. Is my consciousness, can I keep my consciousness in my heart and go beyond the physical sensation and truly making love with myself, which as I say that, I feel resistance. There's an excitement that I feel, and I feel, wait, that's weird. How do you even do that?
Yeah. I remember when I did this for the first time, it was mind blowing. I was rolling around the bed, touching myself in all different ways and just lost in my own touch and exploration. And I was like, what? I made love to myself for the very first time.
Can you describe that to us more? Describe what you're feeling, what you're thinking, the mindset that you're in when you are truly making love with yourself.
So mind is not thinking. I would start with that. The mind is not thinking. You are really fully relaxed, fully present, fully in the moment. And there is just very little doing. There is more of this kind of, I don't know, intuitive flow with your body, with touch, with breath. And it's a kind of communion, but this time with yourself. And it can include pleasure. I like to say pleasure is like this fuel. If you bring a little bit pleasure in a sense of physical stimulation, can intensify the sensations, can bring more energy that you can then play with. And it doesn't mean climax. It doesn't mean getting to a specific point. It's being with that feeling of pleasure, bliss, oneness, moment to moment, without chasing a specific point.
So are
Bibi
you experiencing...
is talking about mindfulness, really. She just described what mindfulness means. By the way, mind is thinking, but your attention isn't on it. Because mind is always thinking. But I understand that you're saying your attention is not on the mind.
Yeah. And I like to say mindless. I don't like to say mindful sex. I don't understand why we have this, why we named it mindful.
It's really interesting, Bibi. Let me tell you. I have heard this objection for over 30, 40 years. only people whose first language is not English say that. That's so interesting for you to know.
Okay.
Because mindful to them is like a mind that is full.
I never thought of it that way. I'm never going to look at the word. I'm never going to perceive the word the same way again.
So anyways, let's go back. That was a digression.
Yeah. Anyway, so, and then I'm going to give you another example. Like, to me, again, there is not necessarily a cost to pleasure, because for me, pleasure is not just the climax. Last night, I leaned on this gentleman, and he was breathing at my neck and gently putting his lips around my neck, and I had a neckgasm. There was no cost to that. There was no cost to that neckgasm.
I'm all about the neckgasm, let me tell you. I love
and
neckgasm.
then I guided him out to stroke my ears, and I experienced a beautiful eargasms. And there was just this beautiful flow and opening and closeness. And yeah, I think what you refer to is much more that mainstream version label of pleasure, that it's performative, it's goal-oriented, it needs to lead to something specific, like in climax and release. But pleasure is so much more than that. It's infinite, really. So, yeah.
I want to understand more of the mindset and the paradigm you are when you're saying self-love. Is it, I'm this incredible being, I want to get to know myself more? Is there that? I want to connect with myself on a deeper level. And in the same way that you would want to connect with another partner, another lover on a deeper level, having that same perspective with oneself. And what have you learned about yourself just through making love to yourself?
Yeah. I'm going to give you a specific example. I find that one that stood out. It was happening last year. It was, again, when going through a heartbreak, and like my mom was very close to passing, and I was doing my self-pleasure ritual where I really surrender to the process. There is definitely no chasing, no grasping of an orgasm or a certain outcome. And there's just being with my body, exploring, as you said, touching myself even from different ways that I normally do, being really present with what it is. And I experience. It was very interesting. There was a surge of pleasure, and then there was a surge of grief and sadness. And I was crying, but like a little baby. And then from there, it turned into a laughter. And from there, it turned into an orgasmic wave. And then it brought me back to the grief and crying. And I was riding these waves for, I think, almost 2 hours. And it was like a crygasm meets pleasuregasm meets griefgasm, where you bring pleasure, embodiment, presence, energy to anything that is alive, and you make love to it. Yeah.
It's all beautiful. This is something that I've realized for myself, by the way, is that the full spectrum of emotions, beautiful. They're just different flavors of being. And if only we can put down our resistance to them, we can really experience them and in a way make love to them. Right?
Just think about what that is, holding it in. Orgasm with grief, it's like allowing the emotion to stay within you and not wanting to, exactly what you said. I love what you said, Bibi, that it's not like wanting it to get to a place. There's no agenda free working with it and holding it in. Just think about physically, it's that too. Just think about that a person is in you and you're holding it in and you're enjoying this intimacy.
I just realized, I just made a connection in my mind, and this is big for me. So one thing that I've been really exploring lately is the creative process and how anything can be used as content for creativity. Any emotion or anything, you use that as fuel for the creative process. And that same paradigm applies to lovemaking. Whatever we're experiencing can be used as energy for the lovemaking process, whether it be with yourself or with another person.
But it's so funny that you say that. My number one creativity practice is self-pleasure. And I have a protocol around this where I'm thinking of a new course or an event or something that I really want a creative input for. I bring that intention to my practice. It's a long one. It's like an hour or two. And I bring pleasure. I start writing the waves, and I literally have a pen and paper next to me.
Wow.
Because then I bring this idea, and once I'm in those pleasurable state, the ideas there's like a rainfall. It is so powerful that I actually want to do a course on this. And I mapped the whole course doing this exact practice. I was like, let's use this practice to map this course. It's called Erotic Downloads.
Fascinating. I love that.
I love it.
I love that.
And I literally mapped out this whole course doing 2 self-pleasure practices. And at some point I was standing and then I was just writing down and I was laughing. And I said, just please stop with the ideas because I have lists this big and they're all so good. And there's no way I can act on all of it. Enough. And you see how lit up I got when you share that. This is how limitless it really is.
Well, it makes perfect sense. They say for the creative process, we got to get out of our mind, and that our subconscious mind, and other people are more esoteric, they believe there's downloads from the field, but you can't be in your mind in order to access that kind of creativity. And the more present we are, the more we have access to it, and the more safe we feel, the more we have access to it. And self-pleasure cannot happen if one is not in a place of complete and utter safety. And then when that happens, so much opens up. We're so much more receptive.
Yeah, this is why I'm so passionate about this topic, guys.
Because
it's a portal to just show. It's a portal to healing, to creativity, to just to changing this freaking world, guys. And we don't have to sit in a ceremony that is illegal. We all have access to it right here, right now. And it's so damn powerful. It can really save the world.
Bibi, do you realize how close, how almost identical what you're describing is to spiritual contemplation? I literally do the same, but from a different path. It's so fascinating. Yeah. I can't capture my ideas, and I have to audio tape it because I know there's no way I can even write it down when I get to that state. But I'm just so fascinated how we arrive at the same place with completely, seemingly, 2 different paths, where as I listen to you and I think it's exactly the same thing. I once asked my teacher, Vivekananda, a Buddhist monk, why there is so much conflict in the world if truly all isms want the same thing. Isms and asms, chasms and gasms and isms. He said, I was driving him to the airport. He asked me and he said, is that the only road to the airport? I said, no. He said, what other ways are there? And I said, at least 5. And then he said, why did you take this road? I said, because from where we were to the airport, this was the best path. He said that the path that is most obvious and comfortable and available to us. And then when on our way to getting to the airport, we start trying to convert people and say, oh, you're silly that you're going that way. My way is the best way. This is the only way. And you got to get there. So as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, it doesn't matter what it's called. I can call it whatever I want, and you can call it whatever you want. But it's the same thing. It's that inner intimacy, connecting with self, which to me, when I'm connected to me, I'm really connecting to the God in me, for lack of a better word, because I'm part of that all one body of life. So I'm connecting to that. And once you connect to that, there's so many ways that I call it the universal bank of consciousness, because now I have access to your consciousness, the consciousness of Einstein, consciousness of Mother Teresa. They all have deposited in that bank, and hence all that has been and all that hasn't been but has potentiality for being is available to me. So, and I'm thinking what you're saying is exactly the same thing I do. I don't call it intimacy of the body. I call it you going into my soul and the spirit, soul being my part of spirit and spirit being the collective spirit. So,
yeah, absolutely. And isn't it like partially what Tantra said, that everything can be a portal to God? Meditation, chanting, contemplation. And so can be cooking and cleaning, right? So that's very true. Yes. However, from a little bit more of a practical standpoint of view, and something that I observe, and this is again not gonna be so elevated. It's not gonna be such an elevated argument. What I believe is the challenge that most people in their survival mode, busyness of everyday life, somehow either don't have enough time or motivation or persistence to stay in meditation, contemplation that takes longer. Sexuality, I don't like the word shortcut, but I like the way highway can be a highway to those states. And in some way or another, all people have sex, while still not all people are meditating. So it's a little bit more of an easier or maybe faster way to some kind of an awakening. And that a realization that can happen just for an orgasm instead of contemplation that does require more time and dedication and devotion. Yeah, so I think that's where I'm coming with that. So all paths are valid. And I also sit in contemplation, and I also meditate, and I also go to Vipassana, and I also have my other ways. And I would just actually say that what I do is a merging of sexuality and spirituality and really bringing the two together, right? But again, I feel like for what I'm doing, there's this easier access point. And I'm just going to say last thing to this before, Ben, I hand it over back to you. For example, so many CEOs, so many business people end up in my courses. And they come there because they want orgasm. They want a full body orgasm because they heard about it. They want to last longer in bed, whatever it is. And I don't care what gets them inside of my containers. While they're in, we're going to get deep. And we're going to do all kind of things like shadow work, emotional alchemy, and all the other things before I even get you to those types of orgasms. And then essentially they end up doing the work. But what got them in the door is the promise of a full body orgasm.
Fair enough. It's a much more available and easier way to get people in. I agree.
Than telling them that they will have to contemplate for an hour a day, right?
You say, sure, when I have time, I'll let you know.
Oh, yes, you are right. Yeah. And if we want to reach the masses, I think there is some power in the sexuality approach, but it also is a double-edged sword, like everything, right? It is powerful, but it can also be misused and abused.
Yes, absolutely. And, that's the key, is to do it, be as conscious as one can be. It takes a lot of self-awareness to be doing it for the right reasons. Sexuality is just such a tricky thing. Sexuality is so powerful, sexual energy, right? It's both drives our most animalistic and shadow aspects of ourselves, and it's the creative life force. It's the thing that brings life to this world. It's the fuel for creativity. It's bliss. So it's a delicate.
But it can also be that animalistic.
It could be that, but it's the quality of the consciousness.
Wow.
Yeah, as long as our quality of our consciousness is in the right place.
We are connected, because you asked a very good question.
That's what I mean.
You said the consciousness is either in penis or in my heart. And I'm saying, what if your heart is connected to your penis?
Exactly. And I still believe that a conscious cock is valuable. If your consciousness is just in your cock, there isn't anything wrong with that. Conscious cock can heal. Conscious cock can do many beautiful things. The only thing is that
if it's conscious, it is connected. It's only conscious
exactly.
can come with connection. You
True,
can't be
true.
conscious
Exactly.
without
Yes.
connection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bibi, I read one of your posts and it just brought tears to my eyes.
Which
I'm gonna
one?
read
Tell
it.
me.
Can I be feminine? Can I be a feminine being, driven, focused, and successful? For me, femininity is about knowing and accepting our true selves with compassion. It's the gentleness that lets us delve inwards and open ourselves to the nuances and subtleties that make us who we are. It is not in conflict with strength, power, or success. Instead, it is the capacity to stand confidently in your truth. It is balance, embracing the strong with the soft, the delicate with the gritty. Ultimately, when you are feminine, you are doing you without reservation or apologies. And I really feel that.
Good. I'm so proud of myself.
I really feel that. That doesn't only apply to women. Very much applies to men.
Because energy doesn't have gender. Every man and every woman holds both feminine and masculine, so it appeals to both.
And one of the reasons I also wrote this post, because first of all, there's so much confusion, I think, nowadays, right? It became such a popular topic and it's easy to fall into the traps of, is it just being soft and wavy and flowy? And yeah, I just have so many women who come to my courses with a statement, I want to be more feminine. And what I do in the course, once we actually tap into the body, connect to the pussy, I'm going to say word yoni, I guide women for practice when they define for themselves what that feminine means for them. Instead of just telling them that it's this or that. And that was exactly where that post was born. Because so many women are beating themselves up for not being feminine enough. They're literally beating themselves up for being like too strong or too successful or too structured or persistent. It's interesting. We are almost like swing to the opposite side. If women are very critical of themselves for not being feminine enough, then I actually went for this myself.
It's super powerful. I can tell you as a man who, for a lot of my life, I had rejected parts of me. I wasn't compassionate towards parts of me. And now, having in the last year plus, exploring those parts of me in compassion and love and truly accepting myself unconditionally. It's so powerful and it's so beautiful, and we all need that. And this is what it's really about. A woman who's insecure about her femininity is a woman, my guess is, my hypothesis, is not fully connected to their true selves. And the same goes for a man who might not be in his healthy masculinity, because his masculinity ends up becoming a way of a tool for overcompensating for parts of himself that he's rejected. So until he has fully accepted and embraced himself and has had compassion for all parts of himself, he won't know his true masculinity. Yeah, for me, it's very profound what you wrote there, very deeply profound.
I'm so glad to hear that. And I just wish everyone could allow themselves to really tune deeply in to have their own definition of the masculine and feminine rather than comparing it to some ideas that we are presented left and right And I think that's a lot of that self-criticism and beating up comes from for many women, thinking that this should be this and that, and this is how it looks like, and they're not meeting that standard. Similar to the beauty standards, there's this feminine goddess standard that was created with this trend where many women feel they don't meet it. Instead, I want it to be something that is true to each person. And you're masculine. What does that mean for you? So whoever is listening, I just invite that contemplation, that reflection. What does that mean for you? What resonates? What is your unique expression of that? And being feminine is then having a love, compassion for that unique expression.
What is your intimacy weakness, Bibi?
And I'm going to bring this because this is just being alive as I'm home here with my dad. It still is, I don't know, subconscious attraction to a lot of men who resemble him in a way.
Yeah.
And I'm so aware of this pattern, and I'm so, aware of this dynamic. And there's still a bit of a pull towards that. So I guess,
that you don't desire?
No, the pull that I just am drawn towards that similar type of a man. And I've done the work around it. I'm aware of the pattern. And still, there's this attraction that often brings me to the same pattern, that I am then replaying.
Have you tried accepting that as part of you?
Yeah, I did partially as well. Yeah,
but you still have a tension when you speak about it, as if it's a problem you need to solve.
Yeah. And I think it's just like this potentially never-ending dance between accepting it and trying to change it. Yeah.
Sometimes accepting it is the best way to change it, because you're going against it when you're not accepting it. You see it as a problem, exactly how Ben was talking about celibacy and bliss. I think it's I hear the same pattern, that it's the
totally
thing.
Yeah. And maybe maybe it comes down to finding a partner who might still resemble it, but is ready to go on a spiritual journey of exploring it together.
Okay.
Yeah.
That note.
Bibi, this has been such a joy. I feel nourished by this conversation. And I'm so grateful for you, for having the courage and the boldness to do what you do, to do it so, not only do what you do, but do it so consciously, and giving people permission to explore an aspect of our human nature that is so oftentimes tabooed, and it's riddled with so much baggage and trauma, and shining the light on that. Your work is really important. So thank you for doing what you're doing. And the biggest takeaway for me was around self-love. And I think I experienced the paradigm shift today around that. And I'm interested in exploring that. So thank you. Thank you for that.
I want to thank you for bringing consciousness to one of the most unconscious activities of human beings. And I think that work is amazing, that if you can bring consciousness to that part, I think then the rest is easy. And I think that's amazing. I don't think you are, I don't know what word Ben used, I don't think you're showing people what to do. I think you're just embodying it, and teaching it is amazing. My takeaway has been neckgasm and eargasm.
I knew.
and crygasm, griefgasm. And I love all the gasms because that is so true. And that's why people fight and then go and have sex, because there was a fightgasm probably happening that they want to now turn it into a physicality. And
turn everything to a gasm and it becomes great.
And then you look forward to it. It's just, let's go for it. Let's have a fightgasm and a disagreement-gasm and turn it into an orgasm. That's a completely different consciousness, bringing consciousness to the experiences that we usually want to deny or reject or change. I think that's amazing. So I will add to your list fathergasm, that as women we need to accept that our fathers are part of our psyche of working. That was the first man we met, the first man we worshipped or denied and rejected and objected to. So to me, it makes complete sense. My father has passed away and my partner physically, literally looks like my father. And I'm very aware of that. He has the same body disposition and same heart-mind connection that I admired in my father. And I'm not afraid of it. I say it. And I think it's beautiful.
Thank you for sharing that. That leaves me with my takeaway. Which I love what you reflected back on me, Mitra. That there's still, the same. It's like when we sit inside of our own jar, we cannot see the sticker. Same way I read Ben's sticker, you read my sticker. And there is a bit of a resistance in accepting that I am attracted to these types. And is there something wrong? And that there can be growth and healing and beauty in that too. So that's my takeaway.
It's only wrong when it's in the dark and we're not aware of it. Once you shed the light on it, there is no wrong. The only wrong, as I see it, is lack of light. When I see what's happening and I choose consciously, I chose, of course, as a young woman, I looked at my father and I said, I love your gentlemanness. I love, which to me means connection between heart and mind. And I chose that. And I stayed with me. And now I know why I'm attracted to a man that somehow reminds me of my father. It's very consciously, it doesn't mean anything more than that. And I'm grateful for that. So denial of that, which I see in the psychological realm, is, oh God, it's like yuck. You're attracted to your father? Yeah, I am attracted to some aspects of my father that I consciously chose, both as a child, knowingly, with awareness, and as an adult. I love that. I admire that. I talk about it, and I'm proud of it, that I had a father who has attributes that I would like to experience again in my life. So
beautiful. Thank you for that.
Thank you. You took us to a very deep place from a very pleasureful route, and I'm very grateful, and I'm really interested and curious about your work. So I would love to find out more. It's just beautiful.
How can we all learn more about your offerings?
Yeah, I want to say I have this really complicated Polish surname, and I haven't changed this early enough, so now it's too late. So my website is called energeticlovemaking.com, and that will redirect you to my name. And my Instagram has a funny name of Planet Bibi. Make it easier for people. Otherwise, they would never find me. They would never find me. So it's funny, but I'm just going to bring it a fun little story on this date yesterday when I guided this man for his whole ritual. And it's profound. It's hours long. And all these things are so new. And then he asks me, where are you coming from with this? And I say, Planet Bibi.
I probably Googled it to see which planet is
experiencing this naked, smelling gasms and things I'll show you. Where do you come from? No, Planet Bibi. So that's that. To finish it on a light and funny, humorous note. But if you do follow me, please just don't follow me only on Instagram. There has been more and more challenges. The censorship is getting stronger by the day. It's fascinating to observe. Modern witch hunt is happening. So yeah, even if you find me for Instagram, there's so many beautiful free offerings I have. You can join my newsletter and then we can play. Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. For a list of the links and other resources referenced in this episode, check out the podcast description.
If you're benefiting from our podcast, we'd love if you could help us reach more people by subscribing. Your support means the world to us. From our hearts to yours, we thank you.